Welcome back to BJJ Panda Journeys Stories from the Mat. I'm Nick.
I'm Vic.
And today I'm really excited about this guest. This is somebody that I met in my travels. So some of you know that I travel quite a bit. Obviously, I'm from upstate New York, Boston, Colorado, and now Cincinnati. But while we went back home to visit my wife's family, we were looking up gyms and came across this gym in particular and met Ben. So hi, Ben. How are you?
Good, man. How's it going? Good to see you guys.
Awesome. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Of course, we have our new soundboard, so I get to make the clappy sound, so that's pretty exciting. So for all of our fans out there, we hopefully you might even be watching this on YouTube. So we're working really hard on getting video out there so you can see our logo behind us.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Vic painted that on the wall.
I did.
Majestic. It's really nice.
They watched me do it.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So hopefully this will be on either TikTok in bits and pieces. You're seeing a 30-second clip of this, or on the tubes of you.
Yeah.
You.
You should show the people the one TikTok you made. I actually think I have it saved.
I have it.
You have
I
it?
have it. Whatever to lead in, it's pretty horrible. All right, so let's get on. 41-year-old men should not do TikTok. All right, so although it's becoming like this really big like thing for
super trendy
parents and like weird dances that mothers do in the kitchen. Oh, that's weird.
Listen, make that cheddar.
Baby,
income.
I'll do it. Yeah, passive income. All right, so let's talk, Ben. So Ben, you own Haven Jiu Jitsu.
Yep.
And that's in Baldwinsville, New York.
Yep.
Yeah. So for anybody that's not familiar with the state of New York, it's a big state. Like there's this whole big chunk of land
outside of New York City.
That's the running joke for anybody that's from Western New York or Central New York. Everybody says, "Oh, you're from New York. Well, what part?" I'm like, upstate. Oh, like what? White Plains? Like, go like another 80 to 150 miles north, and you start to get into where we're from.
When I think New York, I think of just the city.
Yeah, that's what everybody.
It. Well, and when I went to Massachusetts with Kelsey, and we had to drive through New York, I was like, dude, I thought, like, why is this state like a lot more than I thought it was?
It's huge.
What's all this farmland and trees and stuff?
No, I was shocked. I was like, I didn't know there were farms here.
So people ask, so I came from Boston and moved to Cincinnati. Everybody asks me, how do you like Cincinnati compared to Boston? Because obviously it's a big city. And I said, well, most of my childhood, I grew up in upstate New York. And they're like, oh yeah, so you were like lived in Boston, then you lived in New York, and then you lived in Boston. It's like, this is totally different. I'm like, no, this is actually almost exactly like upstate New York. Like it's very, very similar. The taxes aren't near as bad, and the gas prices are cheaper. But other than that, it's just like upstate New York. So Ben, usually we start off with height, weight, rank, and how long you've been doing jiu-jitsu for.
So weight right now, 195, but I typically compete at the 181 division in IBJJF. I'm a black belt, one stripe, been training about 17 years. I started back when I was 19, back in end of 2005. So been training a very long time, been in the whole jiu-jitsu community for a very long time. So
I was 3. Yeah, I was born in 2002.
I keep him around to feel better about myself.
Yeah,
it's always nice.
So that's quite a journey that I'm sure you've been on, and some recent things that you and I are actually working on, or I'm supporting your work in, like you're supporting my business by buying shit from me. But it's some really cool stuff we'll get into here in a little bit. But I'm curious, how did it start for you? So back 2006, what led you down the path of jiu-jitsu?
So little backstory. So basically somebody in my family did something absolutely awful and they got put away in prison. And I had like a timeline, like boom, 5 years. And so I started doing research. I was 16 at the time. Like, what can I do to defend me and my family? So fast forward a couple of years and I'm getting ready for college and everything like that. And I find out about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I used Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as essentially my way to get myself ready for hand-to-hand combat. And I also joined OCS for the Marines because at the time it was cheaper for them to train new pilots for the F-35s than to retrain the old pilots. And I was like, what better way to learn how to fucking be a badass than do the Marine and do Jiu-Jitsu? So yeah, that is how I started in Jiu-Jitsu. Was basically, I mean, the truest reason in my opinion is self-defense. So I was looking to basically find a way to defend my family at the time.
So back then, so we has other people started around the same era, that mid 2000s, and there, at least in this area, there really wasn't a lot of jiu-jitsu practitioners, right? And there certainly weren't black belts the way they are today.
So it's kind of a catch-22. So back in Syracuse, the gym that I originally came out of, we were way, way ahead of the curve. So actually, my instructor was a brown belt. I think he got his black belt within the first year of me training. But at the time, we were ranked number 2 in the country at Grappler's Quest. We were actually the people who were doing footlocks and stuff like that actually before anybody. We were the gringos footlocking people back in the day. Yes, that's kind of what they were known for. And then when I was at UB going for engineering and everything like that, there was this school, Jesse. Oh God, I'm going to butcher Jesse's last name, Bodrick or something. But he was a blue belt at the time, and him and his brother actually own an alliance school out in Albany now. But it was a blue belt that I got kind of my first year and a half of training under my belt with, and that was a big deal. I don't know if how many people you've talked to about the old days, but honestly, a blue belt was a big thing. Oh, you get to train with a blue belt? Holy smokes, I can't believe it. So
I don't know if you know Gabe Sloan. I believe he's in it. Well, he was brown belt Masters 2, I think Masters 2, Masters 3, IBJF Worlds. He won.
I wouldn't say 3. I think he's a Master.
Probably 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he won, or maybe Masters, but he won gold and silver. And
nice.
So he started the same way. And he said, yeah, up until his purple belt, that purple belt was a majestic thing for him.
Yes.
That was, we look at black or coral belts.
I don't know what you mean. My purple belt, dude, that's that was it. For me, I want my black belt, of course, but dude, getting purple, that's just that was, it hits, man. You, when you get that purple belt,
I don't want my purple belt. I don't want it. I got my 3rd stripe in my blue, and I'm like, all right, I'm good here for the next 7 to 12 years.
That's fair, dude. I'm telling you that Shark Tank, man, it hits.
I don't even care about the Shark Tank so much because I can deal with 20 minutes just getting the shit kicked out of me. It's the perpetuation after that, where every time you're on the mats, you are the purple belt. You're expected to be good at that.
And then you are the target. You just have a target on your back.
As a white belt, you're expected to know nothing. There's absolutely zero expectations, right? And then when you get to blue belt, there's that.
You're the best of the worst.
Well, but there's an expectation now. But the expectation is you can't blatantly fuck things up. You have to at least have some wherewithal.
Your fundamentals have to be there a little bit.
Yeah, if you extend your arms and you're in mount and you get arm barred, especially by a brown belt or a black, they're taking your arm with them because you just
hopefully making fun of you while they do it. Yeah,
that's a cardinal sin at that point. White belt, whatever, it's expected, right? You get the purple belt, that's not even in your realm of possibilities. That's the I'm gonna make a fool of myself. So
I'm gonna lie. I'll roll with white belts sometimes, and I'll they'll get me in mount, and I'll stick my arm out.
Just to see.
Just to see. They might
just grab your wrist.
Yeah, no, they'll go for it, and I'll yank it back as they're going. I'm like, thanks.
But yeah, so same thing, right? It was that purple belt was the exclusive. That was the person that would travel from gym to gym, and most of the coaches or head owners and head coaches were blue belts.
Yeah,
maybe get a purple belt, but a lot of it was online, and that wasn't online. It was videos,
VHS tapes, man. That's how I remember. Everybody learned. You go to seminars and VHS tapes. Vic probably doesn't even know what a VHS tape is. Just crazy.
I know what they are. I don't think I've ever used one, but I've seen them. I've held one. So yeah, I've just never actually put one.
Betamax is the way to go.
Never.
So same thing, right? And so Buffalo, you said it was mostly blue belt, and then where did you go after there?
So that's when I went back to Syracuse, and I went back to training at my home gym. At that time, then the professor had achieved black belt, and that's kind of where I was for the next 16, 17 years until I opened up my school, essentially.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So I don't know that you and I had actually met, but the first time I came to upstate New York as a practicing jiu-jitsu and doing jiu-jitsu, I think I'd been doing it for about a month. I think I started in November, and it was the end of December because we go back for the holidays, right? So it was around Christmas time.
No, I think you're right.
And I think it was 2018. So that was literally.
Was it 18? No, I think it was 19.
Yeah, probably because you're way better dates than I am. I'm still stuck in 2006.
Yeah. No,
I perpetually think 2006 because I was 26 and that was a great year. beyond that is
makes everything not count anyway. So we don't even know what year it is at all.
That's right. That's exactly.
Yeah, it was definitely 2019.
All right, I'll believe you.
I think it was 2019 because then COVID happened in 2020, and then you weren't like.
What I think I started in, it was like November of 2018. So I started 2019, but it was really December of. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I went to Syracuse, and we found a school out there. I don't remember the name of it, but we went there. It was a pretty big school, and I'd been, God, I think I was like 2 months in. This is the school that you actually came out of, and so I'm there, and I don't know anything from anything, right? And I see all these colors. There's belts everywhere, and I'm like, damn. These must be belts I haven't even heard of yet. Like, this is pretty dope. And then all of a sudden I start watching people. I'm like, oh, well, they got a whatever color belt it was, but they don't seem to know much more than I do. Like, I can tell you that they suck as bad as I do. And then we went to the open rolling session, and I'm rolling with a couple of them, and I'm like, I'm fine. Like, I'm totally good. And I shouldn't be, right? Because I'm 2 months in. Like, I barely know how to shrimp at this point. And we get kind of, getting the rolling thing, and we're about halfway through, and this dude walks up to me, and he looked like Cro-Magnon. Like, he legit looked like right out of the, how they have the picture of like gorilla, and then it goes to like the next stage and the next stage. Like, he was like stage 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Don't know the guy's name. He didn't say anything to me. I don't think he even said hi. And I introduced myself because I'm just gregarious like that. I'm like, hey, I'm Nick. How you doing? I'm like, okay, cool.
Man.
Well, I think he like haphazardly slap bump. He's like just doing one of those, and we just went at it. And this dude was a brown belt, by the way. And just wrecked me.
Yeah.
I mean, like, not even like wrecked, like wrecked me. And I'm like, well, I don't know nothing. Like, I'm cool. I'm glad that I just made yourself feel better about yourself, but that seemed a bit unnecessary.
Oh yeah.
To be honest, I could have just told you how good you are instead of you beating the shit out of me.
I feel like there's always at one point in time at a gym just that big, just big guy. Yeah. But I wouldn't even say just gym bully. I mean, yeah.
I mean, I've been to a lot of gyms.
Yeah.
And I have only experienced that once so far.
Yeah, me too. I mean, so back
now, don't get it twisted. When we went down to Tennessee, and every blue belt in that building was after my ass.
Well, I blame Sean for that. He pretty much called you out.
Sean Nakana. Yeah,
Sean Nakana made
agreed.
Sure you worked.
Agreed. But this guy, like, seriously, 2 months in, and I'm pretty sure I told him I just started, because they said, oh, wow, you only been doing this 2 months and you're already like traveling to other schools. I'm like, well, like, I didn't travel up here to come to your school, but I'm up here. And I figured I'd train. So they all knew that I was like brand new at this. And then come to find out the whole color thing, white belts, all white belts. It's just different versions of white belts, I guess. I don't know how that works, but
so that's actually something that's interesting. So having trained at different places and seeing how school runs things, they run, instead of doing stripes on their white belts, they run it with color belts, like kids programs. So it goes yellow, orange, green. It's a marketing thing, and there's some other schools that do that. I think like Sanjay Ribeiro and Hobson Moore do it. But but it's one of those things. So I'm very competition focused. I think it breeds faster learning. It breeds less ego in the gym, depending on where you are. But it's one of those things. Our guys would be going to tournaments with these yellow and orange belts, and like, guys, you can't fucking wear that here. Like, you gotta
28.
White belt. Like, yeah, it's like, that's not a real thing. I'm sorry, guys. So it always was kind of awkward. So it was one of those things when I opened up, I was like, I gotta stay away from that. It's just too confusing for people.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. And we had this conversation earlier with one of our guests where we're talking about the fact that you could do this for 2, 3. Sean was a 10-year white belt.
Yeah.
And you're talking to people about the sport, and you're like, hey, I've been doing this for a minute. And like, oh, cool. Yeah. What are you? You're like a blue belt or purple belt? Or now I'm a white belt. Like,
yeah.
I'm pretty okay, kind of ish at it. Like, I can kick your ass anyway.
I swear I'm a good white belt.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I just don't get that white belt system, because to me, I mean, they got to get you, like, you're not just going to jump from belt to belt to belt.
Right. Well, and I think to that regard, not only is that very, very pointed, but I think also, like, when you do travel and you go to other schools, there's that awkward, like, why, like, is that judo? What are you doing there?
Yes.
Like,
no, 100%. And it breeds it. And I'm actually against belts in all seriousness altogether. I wish we could go kind of like a wrestling route where it was just basically everybody knew who was good at coaching and knew who was good at competing and rolling just by being on the mats. I don't like the hierarchy ego system that it breeds, because then you guys run into the difference between a competition black belt and then, let's say, the hobbyist black belt who's been training for like 20 years, right? they're not the same person, but you wouldn't know that going on the mat. And sometimes that can get weird if like the hobbyist is going, let's say, to a purple belt competitor, telling them how to do moves. So the hobbyist black belt with a purple belt competitor. That purple belt competitor is probably better at every facet of the game than the hobbyist black belt, right? It won't even be close. But now you've got this weird ego thing bumping on the mat because of belts, and it drives me bonkers.
Well, I agree, and I think even how you, as a coach or a gym owner, how you award those belts is a weird thing. Because to that point, like I'm not going to be as effective at jiu-jitsu as Vic. Like, there's no world, unless Vic stops doing jiu-jitsu for 25 years, there's no world that I'm ever going to be better than Vic.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, he's 20 years younger than I am. He's been doing this for longer than I have. So, at some point we're going to get to black belt, hopefully, maybe, potentially. Even at that point, now we're ranked the same.
Right.
We're far from the same.
Yeah,
like, we are not
different. There's no like unified way to promote someone.
Right.
Like it's all different based, gym to gym.
Yeah. Well, I think in our striking program, we recently adopted a belt system. I don't know exactly where the belt system comes from. Don't particularly care because it never existed before, and you just kind of knew the experienced people versus the newer people. And when you do things, typically you try to pair up the experienced people with the less experienced people. And the belt thing, I would say even more so in our striking program, is just weird because we have fighters who actually competitively fight.
Right.
And they fights, they train for fights. And then you got fat people like me that I just intellectually, I know what I'm supposed to do. I just can't make my we're the same belt. I'm like, but we're not at the same level. Like, I'm not looking to get in a cage with anybody. So I think, belts are I think they're a really good way to feel the appreciation or the praise from your professor, your coach, to say, hey, you're doing the right things. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're wrestling journey. But that's actually what started this podcast. Was I didn't get promoted as fast as somebody else, and I was looking at like, what the fuck, what am I doing wrong? And other people were saying this. So the other guy we started this with, Sean, he'd been a white belt for like 10 years or some ridiculous thing, and it really did come down to everybody's on their own journey, and everybody has different goals, objectives. They want to do this for different reasons. So because of that, it truly is everybody being on their own journey, and that's BJJ Panda journeys. So I think that's but yeah, I thought it was funny. That guy just wanted to rip my head off.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, cool.
Before I've had to deal with that guy. Like Sasquatch,
Yeah.
that was his nickname.
This guy at the gym before I got there.
Yeah. And this was like before the gyms even moved locations, like at the old place, like where it was CrossFit and jiu-jitsu gym. Sasquatch, he was a cool guy until you went to roll with him. Like, dude, I was 11 at the time. I was in the adult class. I felt like the shit because, there weren't a lot of kids doing it back then. When I say back then,
all the way back 6 years ago.
Well, teams kind of fall out in jiu-jitsu, oddly enough. So the fact that you were doing that, like preteen and stuff like that, that's great because that 12 to 17 is like a dead zone in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
that's a weird space to be in for sure.
But dude, I just remember this guy was huge, and I was like 155 pounds, 160 pounds, and this dude was. Nick, he was probably like 250, just jacked.
So I've seen pictures of him, and I heard a story about him the other day where I guess Jordan had to like ask him to leave the gym at one point because he kept saying, dude, you're hurting people.
Yeah, I was 11. And, dude, I was 11. He grabbed just a Kimura grip and just yanked me up and turned it. And at the time, I was young and flexible. Like I'm a lot when you're young, you're bendier. But like, dude, I was like, damn, that hurt. Like it.
Well, that's why eventually Jordan had to, the gym owner had to tell him, dude, I can't have you here anymore. And I think that was the right thing to do, right? Like at some point you have to say, sorry, man.
You gotta cut out the toxic people, man. Sometimes you just gotta, even if they don't mean it, it's just, sometimes you have to for the gym.
Oh yeah.
I heard there was one guy, it was in a forum that I was on, and they were saying how their coach, if you hurt somebody, if they were out, you stayed out for whatever length.
No kidding. Yeah.
Somebody's on them. And that was obviously the difference between them hurting themselves and you hurting them, right? So
yeah.
But yeah,
that's actually not a bad rule. That kind of like that idea.
Actually, yeah.
That was a pretty good idea because then you're like, I don't want to do that again. that was a pretty good one. So yeah, 2008. So what kept you training? You trained from 2006 till now, like 15, 16 years.
All of the years.
It was one of those things. So I got involved originally so I could protect my family. And then it was just due to the nature of why this person went to prison and everything like that, I had a lot of rage at the time, and jiu-jitsu is kind of that thing for me that kind of kept everything level. So even after like years and years and that person kind of went away, it always kept me level. So it was always there for me to that was my safe space, essentially. Like that was my place to like just veg out. Like just if I didn't have jiu-jitsu, like I don't know where I would be. I know everybody says that, but it's very, very true in my case. If I didn't have this outlet, I probably would have gone somewhere very, very negative. What was that?
Oh, go ahead. Finish.
Yeah. So it's just for me, like, I know some people will be like, kind of fell out of jiu-jitsu, kind of got back in. That's not the case for me. Like if I don't know what I'd do without jiu-jitsu. Like, so I had hip surgery 3 years ago. And when I was going through the process, the doctor's like, well, you're going to need a total hip and you're not going to be able to do jiu-jitsu anymore. I'm like, fuck that. Like, this isn't going to be a thing. Right? Like, no, like this is how I make my living, but it's also like my entire life. So went exploring doctors and everything like that. We got a great doctor, Brian Giordano, props to him, out of Rochester, and ended up saving my hip. Didn't have to have a total hip replacement. And so now I'm still able to do it and everything like that. But yeah, it's not, I think never been an idea to be like, no jiu-jitsu.
Well, we hear that from a lot of people where it's the mental aspect and the physical aspect at the same time.
Yeah. Like for me and Nick, dude, I know like if I don't get to roll, and I've been doing this since I was 11, and even like through middle school, through high school, any times where I got just pissed off at school, just and people, just life in general, the gym was always like that just safe spot, like where I could go, where I could let out my frustrations without hurting myself, hurting other people. Yeah. And it was just something to this day, like I still need that. I'm so used to getting that and just being able to let out my frustrations.
Yep.
Yeah. And we've even had Ryan. He was I don't know if he's a psychotherapist or he dabbles in the mental health industry.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's just and I think that's a lot of what we attract is the military, ex-military, that type A personality mindset of just kind of go. But how do you shut that off? Like, when does that stop? And jiu-jitsu gives you the ability because it's mental and physical at the same time. So even if you're physically exhausted and your mind's still running, like you still have those thoughts. And inversely, if your mind is exhausted, but your body's still running, like you just can't stop. Yep. Neither of those are good, but when you got something that wipes both of those out, that definitely helps. So very cool. So now you're in, how old are you say?
36.
36. Okay. So you're in your 30s. Obviously you have a skill set that I don't even come close to possessing yet, but when you roll with younger kids, especially as a black belt, right, you've got that kind of target of black belt. Yeah, you're rolling with those 20-year-old D1 wrestlers. I know upstate New York's got some badass wrestlers. Dude, so I came from Fulton, and in Fulton we had a year. I don't know if you know Coach Connor.
In the country for a while.
Yeah, so Coach Connors, I mean, that dude was no joke. He put together, him and Coach Knight, they put together a hell of a team. Those kind of people coming into the gym and wanting to roll with the owner, the professor, the black belt. How do you deal with that without getting hurt so that you don't get need a new hip or new knee or new elbow or whatever?
Full guard.
So I think I remember hitting. So this is kind of how I judge belts. So I have two judgments on belts, right? So belts, in my opinion, are only there for proper placement in tournaments, right? And so a blue belt for me is, at least at my gym, is anybody can come into the gym and you can roll with them. You might not win, but you won't get hurt while rolling with them. Right. And then a purple belt for me, excluding like if we have like a extremely talented D1 wrestler, you should be able to handle yourself against every single person that comes in the gym, unless there is a massive age issue or weight, difference. So the D1 wrestlers and stuff like that, I play butterfly, half butterfly guard for the most part. They just come in super hard. You get to their legs very easily, and it's usually not the end of the world.
That is really true.
Yeah, and that being said, we have a rule at the gym that there is no winning in training because we want winning to be saved for competition. So if somebody were to come in and smash me, it's kind of whatever. Like, we're there. The training environment at the gym is for skill acquisition alone and to get better coming up for either tournaments or self-defense reasons. So it's really important to have a big distinction, in my opinion, between the training that happens in the gym and then everything else. So if I got guys who are coming in trying to smash everybody in training, I really try to make an effort to remind them, like, you guys save the smashing for tournaments. You meet the skill level of the people that you're going with for skill acquisition for yourself.
And I have to say, so when I went into your gym, I was fortunate enough to find, my wife actually found us, Tara. She found them online because we go and we're like, yeah, you know, the last one we went to, and great, let's see what else is out there. And there were actually 3 that we looked at. So one, they're predominantly, I think, I forget if it's karate or something, and they had a jiu-jitsu program. And I have family that actually goes there. My wife's family, a couple of them go there. I'm like, well, how good is it jiu-jitsu? Because I'm going to learn jiu-jitsu, right? Like, that's my passion. But, you know, he just kind of does that. It was like almost on the side. Like, not what I want. Yeah, exactly. And then there was the one with the Cro-Magnon, and I'm like, yeah, I'm good there. I don't want to go back there. And then there was a third one that I think opened up not too long ago, I think. And I don't remember what happened there, but like they never got back to something. And then my wife found Haven, and we're like, well, let's try it. Let's go down and see what it's all about. So my wife and I went the first night, and it was just super welcoming. Just a great atmosphere. I think to your point, Ben, and what you try to instill, that comes through from people just walking through the door. Right. Yeah. So there's morning classes and afternoon classes. Interestingly, theirs is opposite of ours. Their morning class is kind of like our fight class. Like, they are the really high end, good, big class.
Oh, really?
The evening is kind of more the hobbyist, you know, not so many people.
Yeah.
So I went to, so Tara and I went to the night class, and it was a great time. Like, we learned a bunch of stuff, and you were actually sick at the time.
Yes.
And you're like, so everybody's like, all right, we're going to work on this. And it was really cool because I was working on with somebody, and I was working on we were doing the lasso guard suite.
Yeah.
So first sweep. So I just kind of doing that over and over again. And the guy was working. I was like, oh, how do you do that? So I showed him how to do it. And we just went back and forth and tried to rep. And it was a really good environment. And I'm like, I want to see what the morning thing's about. So the next day, went back to and that morning class, it was awesome. Like, everybody there was super inviting, super open, and super willing to kick your ass. Like, it was just really good. Like, it was
like a good time.
It was probably one of the most accommodating schools. I've been to Michigan. For work, I go to Michigan quite a bit, New York. I've been all over the place, and I've been to myriad of schools. And I would say that yours is probably one of the most welcoming schools from everybody that was there.
Man, I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was cool, but to the point where there isn't an ego, right? And I forget the name. There was a brown belt that I was rolling with, and he showed me a sweep that we were working on. It was
always a brown belt, huh?
What's that?
There's always a brown belt story.
Always a brown belt. This
It's
is a good brown belt.
Okay.
This is a good brown belt. He's more like Kevin. He's
that's good.
Yeah, and he's an older guy. But interestingly enough, a lot of police officers.
Yes.
So I was expecting to get arrested at some point, because I'm sure I have at least one outstanding in the state of New York. But I didn't. And that actually brings me to, so you're actually doing some work with not only the Syracuse Police Department, but also Syracuse University.
Yes.
So you want to talk about that for just a minute?
Yeah. So we're going back. So before COVID, so maybe 2.5 years now at this point, me and one of the police chiefs who I had trained with previously had been kind of bouncing the idea about doing a seminar at his gym, because he knows how awesome jiu-jitsu is. And he was like, hey, I got to get my officers exposed to jiu-jitsu at least. And at the same time, a forensic psychologist named James Knoll, we were looking to get our foot in the door to get something similar to what happened with the Marietta, Georgia study. COVID hits, kind of friggin' crushes all of that, kind of goes on the wayside. What was that?
Georgia, real quick. So anybody that doesn't know about the Georgia Marietta study, so that is the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu in on the police force, right? So as police officers, use jiu-jitsu.
Yes. So not to be confusing. So the DCJS, which is like the governing body here in New York for what's taught to police officers, Jay Wadsworth made a massive overhaul a few years ago. So it is jiu-jitsu based. The issue is, and I don't think the vast majority of people know this, officers get 2 weeks of that during the academy. That's it. They never see that again. So it's basically like taking a 2-week-long self-defense course and be like, good luck for the rest of your life, which is terrifying. Yeah. So as we're going through COVID and everything like that, the Marietta, Georgia study comes out with fantastic results. They showed 53% reduction to suspects, 40% reduction to injuries to officers. Like it's a no-brainer all around. It's saving the department more money than it's costing. Like, let's go with it, right? The problem with the Marietta study, though, is it was done as an internal study, which is fine. You have to start somewhere, right? But we use that to basically wedge the door wide open, getting us a peer-reviewed study through SU, almost identical to what Marietta was doing, except now that it's peer reviewed, we can now take this to legislation, and hopefully nationally is the goal over the next 4 to 5 years, so that we can make the push for consistent training for officers.
That'd be awesome.
Which is crazy. That is the beginning of, because we have police officers that train at our gym, and in fact, there's a new gym that opened up. Mitch, we'll have him on here pretty quick. He's got a gym.
Adopt a cop.
Well, but yes. Russ.
Yeah.
So Russ Kenny, who's a black belt, he's been on our podcast before, good friend of the show and mine. And we were actually at Mitch's gym one day, and he's got a bunch of police officers. I think he does Adopt a Cop.
Yep.
And he actually took them aside and said, hey, these guys are going to roll for a minute. Let me show you some things that are effective in the real world as the police. Like, here's some detainment details. Here's some things you can do to detain or to keep people without hurting them, right? And he spent probably 45 minutes going through.
Oh yeah,
and these guys were loving it.
Yeah,
they were eating up. And these are fresh off the out of the academy police officers in Kentucky.
Yeah.
That, to your point, they got 2 weeks of this, maybe, right? It's very similar to the military combatives program, where if you do just the first combatives, it's like a 2 or 3 week. Now it's intense. It's the entire 2 weeks, every day, all day. But how much of that do you retain?
Exactly.
All it is.
Yeah. Well, and so Scott Smith of NKY, he's the police chief of Ludlow around here, and he has been making strides to get as many police officers around here training jiu-jitsu. And ever since he's opened up the gym, that's been like one of his goals, was getting police officers and in gis training jiu-jitsu, just making sure they're safe and they know how to handle certain situations. And I think it's a great thing. Well,
I think the fact that it's being peer reviewed, and that, again, to your point, that can go to legislation now and say, hey guys, not only has this been proven 1,000 times before, effective, that it works, but here's actually like empirical data that you can refute.
Like, boom, we got it, guys.
Yeah. And you being the spearhead for that, I think you're got a couple really good things going. One, obviously, you're right next to Syracuse University, great institution, great learning institution. So you got that opportunity. But then again, your school and the way it's set up, I think it just lends really well to those types of things. And I'm super excited for you. So that was that. So I have to say that we are the proud supplier.
Yes.
This program. I'm super excited about that. And so it was interesting. So Ben, I said we went up to his school and just got to talking, and we just started Shadow Realm.
Yeah.
And I think we had our gis with us. So it was like their first type of, the prototypes. They kind of looked janky. They're kind of okay-ish, but they were the first.
Yeah.
Samples. And I was telling Ben about it, and we just got to talking one night, and we were talking about it. That was pretty cool. And then, just because I'm trying to get business, I just said, hey, if you're ever interested in getting anything, let me know. But I'm never going to be that guy. It's like, oh, you should buy this from me, right? I'm not pushy like that. And full expectation was nothing. Was that next year when I go back to New York for Christmas, I'm going to go back to Haven, and I'm going to roll there again. That was my expectation. So I think I sent out a blast email to everybody I had. I've got a list of schools that I work with, and I think I added you to that communication. I just sent out a list to everybody and just said, hey, just placing an order. If anybody wants anything, let me know. Right. And that was it. And Ben came back and he's like, actually, not this time, but I've got this thing. And that's when we explained the police study. And he's like, I think, if you want, we can use your keys. That'd be pretty cool. Let's talk about pricing and figure out how it works. And obviously it's got to make sense. And I was like, oh, heck yeah, let's do it. I was super stoked. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm telling everybody at the gym. I'm telling my friends. I'm like, dude, you're never going to believe this. So super excited. We have the Haven police study, I'm going to call it.
Yeah.
Gis for that. So gis and belts.
And patches.
They're gonna look sweet in those gis, dude.
Yeah.
It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, the patches are pretty sweet. I've seen them.
Yeah, Vic's been watching us as we're stitching out the patches.
Pretty cool.
And we got the glimpse of the gis. So they're done in shipping. They're on their way, and then we'll put patches on them, and we'll be up and running. So super excited.
Real sweet.
Super. I got nervous because. So this, again, I'm not sure, this is probably a month or two. I don't know what's going to happen between now and then, but obviously all the stuff in Ukraine and in Russia. So DHL's who we use for our carrier, and they went up 60% in their shipping. Everything went up. Yeah. So I work with some really good guys out of Pakistan, which is where most of these gis come from.
Right.
They make the raw stuff, and then we put all the embellishments on it and do all the embroidery work. But this guy called me and he says, hey, this is what's going on. I can ship it through a different company, but it could take up to a month and a half. And he knew we were up against a timeline. He's like, it's going to cost you this much money to get it shipped DHL. And I swear, if this was anybody else, I'd be like, fuck you. You're just trying to steal my money. But I've spent like literally probably a year vetting all these guys out. And I've met all the guys that would have ripped me off. And I have a really good relationship with this guy. Ryan and Umar. Yeah.
Ryan and Umar
dudes,
from Pakistan.
So so it's on its way. I keep getting DHL updates, so I'm excited about that. We should be able to hit the deadline. But to the point, I'm really excited about this study. I think this is going to be truly groundbreaking, game changing. Yeah, even though the ground's been broken, again, to your point, it hasn't been peer reviewed.
It hasn't been shared.
And so just to kind of give you guys like kind of an overall view, not that it's secret or anything like that, but you guys will probably be the first that'll actually have this out on digital. So the study, the real goal is to get 2,500 officers through this program. I have a buddy of mine, Clark Petrie, he teaches, he's got his PhD, he's working on his PhD, out of the Naval Academy. He teaches math out there. So he's going to be running the second portion of the study where we basically start to churn officers through this program. Once we hit 2,500, there is no more argument whether this is effective or not at a national level. So the goal over the next 5 to 10 years, because that's probably how long it'll take to hit those numbers, unless other people see this and they can come on board and we get something similar going.
That's what I was going to ask. Is this exclusive to Syracuse, or can this be done outside of, like, how does that?
So for right now, for the first year, it has to be exclusive through our program, because our program, once the first year is done, our program is peer reviewed, right? And then it's just that same exact peer reviewed curriculum, then that can be pushed out anywhere. And then that's where we're going for that 2,500 number for the data. So that's long-term goal.
So you get a bunch of gyms on board with that and make that relatively quick.
Exactly. So that's the hope.
And is there like a set criteria curriculum that's taught, or is it they're just learning jiu-jitsu like anybody would learn jiu-jitsu?
No. So we brought in a bunch of the local officers on board. So Chief Jerry Younger, Lieutenant Don Patty, and Sergeant Sean Bergman. And so it's a mix. It is enough to avoid, because New York, you're not going to get a more legislative state than New York when it comes to police. So a lot of the curriculum had to be based around, we can't show any chokes. In fact, they were even worried about us showing a regular seatbelt grip from the back because it includes one carotid. That's how crazy it is here right now. So we had to deal with liability issues when writing up the curriculum, and we wanted it to be based on positions where they could easily go into their curriculum that they learned by the state. So different positions where they can get into cuffing positions and things like that. So it's a very specific curriculum. It's general enough where any jiu-jitsu guy will be able to pick it up and modify it. Like, okay, I understand why they're teaching it this way for the police, but it is not strictly a jiu-jitsu like 101 curriculum.
That's so how long does it take to get through this curriculum? Is it a full year curriculum?
So originally we wrote it up for a full year. It's impossible to get any department to sign on for a full year. So right now we had to really basically cut the curriculum down. It's a 6-month curriculum. And the way that we were able to, because there's a bunch of different things that came up. One of the major ones is overtime. Like, how are we going to fund this because it's not mandatory already, right? And so overtime started to make the numbers astronomical. However, if you run it through them when they're doing the academy and you make it as part of the academy, you just void all the issues of overtime and things like that.
Smart.
So the academy is 6 months long. So the curriculum right now is 6 months long. But the idea is, if we hit that 2,500 number, then it's just part of being a police officer. You train a minimum of 2 times a week, no matter what. That's you being a cop. So that's the goal.
So that's I think that's where we need to get to.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Because 2 times a week, I think, is a sweet spot. That's you can learn jiu-jitsu 2 times a week.
And you will get enough reps in to where you will remember what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, and you'll remember that when your adrenaline's through the roof and you've got
that's the biggie. Yes.
Like that's the thing that
and learning patience and not rushing anything, because normally that's what happens. Someone gets nervous, rushes something, and something bad ends up happening. Or
I mean, let's be honest, that happens to me when we roll at the gym. I'm pretty sure that would happen anywhere. Kevin, all the time, I leave an arm out. That son of a bitch. He loves his arm. We got our brown belt. He's one of our head coaches, and he hunts. He could legit have the perfect setup for a triangle. I mean, he could own the triangle.
Yeah,
he won't take it. He'll take the armbar.
Armbar city, baby. That's what Kevin's about.
He really is, and I've caught on. I started escaping more, but he's one of those people that he'll open the door for you, like it'll be wide open, and you're like, I know it's a trap, but it's like wide open, and you start like walking towards it, and nothing happens, and you keep walking towards it, nothing happens, and then you're like, oh, maybe it's not like maybe I can actually do this. And the second you get like within millimeters of it, it just slams in your face.
Dude, that's been one of my coaches since I started. That's why I hunt arm bars.
Oh, he's so much fun to roll with. He's a lot of fun.
Well, dude, you've seen me and Kev roll. It's dude, it's a battle now. I'm sure he regrets showing me all the stuff he does.
That just means that he's got to get better. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. But all his moves are my moves.
So I am curious, kind of pivoting away from the police study that you're doing, which again, I think is awesome. And thank you so much for using us as your supplier for those geese.
Of course, man. Of course.
That's huge for us. But I'm curious, when you decided to start your own school, what was that like? What was that journey like where you're like, okay, I'm going to do this, going to open a school, I'm going to make this thing happen? What was that like?
So I have been teaching full-time for going on 8 years now. So we had our oldest daughter when I was in respiratory therapy school, my very last semester of it. And my wife was already kind of been a nurse for years and years and years at the time. And it was one of those things, it was actually cheaper for me to do like privates and teach occasional classes of jiu-jitsu instead of us having a babysitter, basically, because childcare is astronomical, as anybody with kids knows, right?
It's crazy.
That's why my wife spent the last 5 years at home with our kids because, I mean, it doesn't make, she's a teacher. And everybody knows how much money teachers make. So legit, she'd be working to pay a daycare system.
Yes, exactly. And it's insane. So it's one of those things I could make more doing essentially like personal training privates and teaching jiu-jitsu than working part-time than I would have working full-time as a respiratory therapist. So fast forward a few years and we have twins and I'm like, oh my God, my life is over. So at that point, I'm thinking like, where's my out of it, right?
I will tell you that every time my wife's been pregnant, which is twice, my biggest fear, not that something would be wrong with them or, everybody's like, oh, I just hope they're happy and healthy. I'm like, fuck that. I just hope they're not like more than one. Triplets,
Imagine 3 Sadies.
Oh my God. I can't even take let alone 3. Jesus.
Dude, every time I meet somebody who's a twin, I'm always like, you have to apologize to your parents. Like, you just go home and say you're sorry at this point.
I had a friend who had twins, and I'm like, dude, it's got to be impossible. Like, how do you do it? He's like, well, it was our first, which was twins. Like, we don't know anything other than having twins. I'm like, dude, if you ever have another one and it's not twins, it's going to be so easy. Like,
yeah, it's way easier, right? So anyway, we had the twins, and then basically I was like Adam Sandler style. I was like, I got a 5-year plan now at this point. When my twins start kindergarten, that is when I will open up a school, which honestly was – so I am one of those people, if I say I'm going to do something, I am going to – a lot of people bullshit. Oh, I'm going to try hard. No, I'm going to fucking do it. Like, it's going to happen no matter what.
I think that's all 3 of us.
Yeah.
Yes, right? And so many people give you that I try thing, and that, as soon as you say, oh, no, I'm going to try to do it, nah, you're not about it, right? Like, you're either going to do it or you're not. So 5-year plan, and dude, I just fucking hammered studying market research, figuring out where the demographics are in this area. Like, all I did was business plan and save for 5 years. And that's why, like, I think when you came over, Nick, we'd only been open 4 months or 5 months or something like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, we just passed 220 students as of this month in essentially an 8-month period. So like,
so it's interesting because I will tell you again, the way we find schools is you Google them and you look at reviews and you kind of look. I usually look at the website and I see what the school's about. And if it's all like, I don't know, you can just tell like the douchey ones.
Yeah.
You can see it. So like, oh, no, like you just got a ponytail. I'm out. Like, I don't know. Definitely tell that. And so I say that to say, usually the way you grow, you get higher in the SEO and get more hits to your website, and you get higher on the Google searches and Yahoo searches and like that is one of a couple things. It's the amount of organic SEO, which is the amount of clicks that you get and the amount of clicks you get from other pages and all that crap. And then the other one is you just pay somebody a boatload of money and they build out your SEO crap and whatever. And those are usually the douchey pages, by the way. Like, you can tell this guy spent like 20 grand on SEO. Like, it sucks. Everything about it's bad. So when we did our Google search, obviously your school came up and it was one of the higher ones, and it met like kind of my main criteria to look for in a school. So again, back to your point, all that research that you did, it worked because it got me in the door.
Yes.
And if I ever move back to New York State, which I probably ever won't, but if I did, obviously that'd be a place that I'd want to train for sure.
That's awesome, man. Yes. Yeah. So honestly, just a lot of work over a 5-year period. And like, the thing is I've always been very upfront about opening that school. So the place that I was training at knew that I was going to open. It was not and should not have been a surprise to anybody. So yeah, fast forward, and now we've got this kick-ass school, and it's awesome. So
I think that's the best way to open up a school. You don't want to become enemies with, the people around you. I mean, that's going to hurt.
I think it's inevitable. Like there's going to be people that are pissed off and
of course. But
I think so. Well, Dirk was on, right? And Dirk taught. So he was a guest that we had on. He's out of Columbia, Georgia, and he opened a school. He came into an area that there was already established schools. He came in and opened the school, but he went around to every school in the area and said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. This is my clientele. Like this is the kind of student that I'm looking for. This is the kind of program I'm trying to put together. Could be the same or could be different. I just want to let you know I'm here, introduce myself." And he's got a great working relationship with all those local schools. I think it's a bit more challenging when you leave a school in the area and move out. And we saw that, right? We had kind of a divide a few years ago at our gym. And, there's people that were butthurt. I think what's been interesting is in the past, I'm going to say 2 years, that subsided because you've still got a couple legacy folks who've been around for a while, but and even some of them, they trained at both gyms.
Yeah.
And they don't dislike either head coach or owner. It's like, yeah, mom and dad are fighting. I still like mom. I still like dad. Like, I don't really give a shit. Y'all don't like each other.
Right.
So I think from a student perspective, it's not as bad as it is from the coach's perspective after time.
And that's another thing that I've been trying to foster. So we've kind of had one big school, the school that I came out in the area. They've basically had a monopoly. I wouldn't even consider the other schools competition because they're so much smaller, right? But because of that, there have been things that have been done to really push these people out. So that's something I've been trying to foster in the area is I would like jiu-jitsu in our area to at least take over karate. And the only way it's going to do that is if some of these schools are at least working together. So once a month, we do a big inter-school open mat where all the schools can come down. They're all invited. They can train at my place once a month. And then we go to Ultimate Athletics in Phoenix because we're the two schools that we have enough mat space to facilitate that many people coming in. So once a month, we try to get as many of the schools locally on board to come in and say hi, like just get some of that BS. Like, even though I have the Cobra Kai picture up at my gym, get some of that gum.
Awesome.
Was it strike first, strike hard or something on the brick wall?
I think that's great. I mean, that's what
awesome.
You want. I mean, each school is different. What I teach is going to be different from what, let's say, Scott from NKY teaches, or what Dirk teaches.
Well, and even different styles of rolling, right?
Exactly.
Like we get so used to the styles of rolling in our own gym. We were talking about this the other day, is that we should do like just a local, our tri-state, so Indiana, Kentucky, and Cincinnati, tournament.
Yeah.
Right? So we go to Fuji's. It does, and I think for us it'd be a small tournament, right?
Well, even if it's not a tournament, an open mat would something to where we get different people in, get different roles, get different opportunities, and like the different body types. Because again, jiu-jitsu is based on who you are as a person and what's comfortable for you, who
you are, and then in some cases your, I don't want to say affiliation, but affiliation, I guess. Like for Team Sean Hammond's, which is what we're under, it's heavy grind,
smash and grind
Gracie pressure, dirty grind. Like we're putting our hand over your mouth. Like we're
here to like grind you out, make you wish you never called us out to roll.
But at the same time, you got people that are so technically perfect that they can thwart a lot of that. And it's really cool to be able to roll with those different styles that you're going to get from a Gracie school, Gracie Baja.
If you can do things locally, I think it does a couple of things. It takes away the other, so you don't have like as much just ridiculous animosity for no reason between schools. Like it's absurd, right? And then the other thing is jiu-jitsu really should be about there's honestly, even around here, everybody who's teaching is good. Like there's nobody who's bad. So you should just be picking it based on how close it is and the atmosphere. If you like the atmosphere, that's where you should be training. Like that should be the major pick for jiu-jitsu schools. So
agreed. And I think to your point, especially if you're not at that level to begin with, you're not looking to compete at like an ADCC level. you're gonna get really good information.
Yeah.
I think how the information gets disseminated, that could be different, right? So you're gonna learn differently. I know for me, like I love James Hoyt. He's one of our coaches. He's amazing. He's a phenomenal no-gi guy, awesome in the gi. Like his ability and his preciseness in every movement he makes is incredible. Like I'm awe-inspired by him. I also know that he's like 140 pounds and he's tiny, and I can't move the way that James can move. We'll be working on something. He's a wrestler too, so he has really good level change. Like the dude can change levels like he's on an elevator. It's ridiculous. And he'll show like some kind of relatively aggressive level change kind of thing, and he looks at me and goes, "You can work on whatever you want to." James. but to that point, like he knows that don't have the same body. I can't put my knee into my nose. Like that's just not a thing. I have this big gut in the way, right? So I think there is some validity to the coaching style and the coach's style. And beyond that, to your point, like they're going to be good. They're all going to show you something. And at a blue belt level, I'd say even a purple belt level, you're going to learn something. There's no way, unless you're being a dick, there's no way you're not going to learn something for a brown or for a black belt or a purple belt, at any level.
Yeah.
So I think that's the vibe to me is the big thing. Like that's what you should be looking for. And to that point, I think cross training, if you're at a gym right now that tells you can't cross train,
leave.
I would implore you to leave. Yes. Like that is just some bullshit right there.
I know this isn't back in the 90s, Brazil, where, it's either my gym or no gym. Jiu-jitsu is a lot more family friendly now, mainstream. Any gym you go into, you're a family.
Well, and I think you forget that you're also a paying customer of a service, because it's so family oriented.
Exactly.
So then you start to feel that sense of, you feel that sense of like, what is it? Loyalty.
Yeah.
But it's loyalty to somebody that you're paying money to. Like I'm giving you my hard-earned dollars every month, and then you're going to tell me what I can and can't do in my own time. Like, no, that's not okay. But you have that sense of loyalty because it is such a family, family environment.
Well, because like obviously some coaches go above and beyond that dollar sign, right? And so that is sometimes part of it with the loyalty. But I've had this discussion with other business owners, the stealing students, right? That's always like a big thing. Oh, don't steal my students. You're poaching students. But at the end of the day, like, how can you poach anybody? Either they're happy with your product and they want to stay, or they're not. And if they're not, you either have to match what their demands are or just let them go. You can't really. There's not really poaching. And it's kind of one of those things that kind of comes back to, I think people forget we're offering a service and we don't own the students, which a lot of people forget.
I said this to somebody the other day about our gi brand. Like, do I want every single person that rolls jiu-jitsu in my brand? Absolutely. Do I also know that some people want shoyu roll, some people want Fuji, and some people want inverted gear, and some people want Vic, for God's sakes, the dude's on the podcast, he still wears shoyu roll because he likes shoyu roll. And I can't get concerned about that. Like, it is what it is.
I'm rocking BJJ Pandas now.
Listen, I went so far as to make him his own custom gi with like his custom logos and his name on the lapel.
Real nice.
He's still gonna wear shoyu roll.
I only have one.
But look at the reality is it's a product. It's something that I'm offering. It's not the same as everybody else. It's a little bit different. Some people are going to like it. Some people aren't. It's going to be for some people. It's not going to be for others. And I can't very well expect that every single person that does jiu-jitsu is going to buy their stuff from me. That's just not a realistic expectation. I want to get as much of the market as I can. So I'm going to put out the best possible product that I can. And I'm going to learn and adapt. If somebody says, hey, I don't like this, then we'll look at changing that. But at the end of the day, I don't get to make that choice. My customer does. The choice I get to make is what's the product I want to put out. And that's it. Like that's the choice I get to make. So, and I think it's the same thing as a school owner. Your choice is the product you put out, which is your coaching staff. It's your environment that you're creating. It's the cleanliness of your environment. It's the updatedness of your environment. And some schools are going to be that more kind of like our school is definitely more of a not your average Joe's kind of gym. We're not a Globo gym by any means. But to that point, you can still have clean mats, right? You can still have equipment that you are using can be good equipment. Your bags aren't ripped up and just beat to shit. Like they're good mats.
And I think it's important that coaches, goes in general, just because I do think we are starting to finally see a transition from the old guard to newer. And I think a lot of the newer people get this, but some of the old guard kind of forgets a lot of this stuff is essentially that you should be focusing on making the best product that you can put out and not tearing everybody down to be better than the other schools, which seems to have been very much an old school philosophy. Like there can be nobody else. And if there is, we're going to just make it so they don't exist by any means necessary. Instead of like, well, if you had focused that time on that negative energy and just put out a better product, not only are your students going to be better for it, which is the important thing at the end of the day, but everybody's going to be better for it at that point. So,
you know, so it's interesting you say that, because I think that's not a jiu-jitsu thing. That is a business thing. And I will tell you from my experience, it's the people that are insecure are the ones that do that, right? Instead of trying to make their product better, they try to make the other competitors' product seem worse.
Yes.
I see it all the time. When we went and bought our embroidery machine, I mean, that was expensive. It was a lot of money. It cost about the same as a car. Like, it's super expensive. We walked into our local sewing shop that sells these things, and the guy didn't want to give us the time of day. He didn't want to say anything to us. What he did, and again, we're spending a lot of money, and it was like we're wasting his time. And I'm thinking to myself, well, Jesus, I'm about to drop like what some people consider their salary for a year on this fucking machine, and you don't want to talk to me for more than 5 minutes. I'm boring you. I'm sorry, man. So anyway, obviously I didn't buy it from him. The one thing he told me a lot was not about the machine, but how horrible his competitor was. That's about 30 minutes north of here. Oh, don't go up there. We've had people gone up there before, and then they always end up coming here anyway because they have questions and they're too far away and blah, blah, blah. Like every reason in the world why we shouldn't, not that we should buy it from him, why we shouldn't buy it from the other person.
You got to focus on, if you're a coach and even a business owner, just focus on either being the best coach you can be or the best business owner you can be. Don't worry about anybody else.
Yeah.
Because
guess where we're going to buy the embroidery machine from?
The other place. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, you can get caught up on the other gyms, but don't worry about them. Yeah. Focus on you, your students, your team. All right. Make them better. All right. Because if you spend too much time focusing on other gyms and what they're doing, you're not going to get your members, your students, or whatever. You're not going to get them ready for any jiu-jitsu competitions, any belts, promotions, stuff like that.
Yeah. The point that you made, Ben, was, you get to decide how you spend your energy, right?
Yes.
We all have a finite amount of time, a finite amount of energy.
I'm finding that out.
You only have so much.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a lot more time than I do because you're young. But I mean, literally in the day, there's 24 hours. I don't care who you are. You get 24 hours.
That's not enough time.
It isn't. And how you use that 24 hours is up to you. And you can use that time being the best coach, preparing for your classes, studying stuff yourself, trying stuff yourself, workshopping it, making sure it works, thinking about how you're going to teach it and how you're going to coach it for your business, how your business is going to be set up and run. Or you can spend it thinking about all the ways that the other place is better than you are, and you got to prove that you're better than. Like you get to decide how you spend that energy and time, and that's the differentiator, and it comes out to your customer, which in this case would be your student. Right? I mean, it becomes evident quickly. So, I think really, really cool to see that come to light. And again, I'm fortunate enough that I get to see a lot of different gyms as I travel. So it's interesting. You can tell the different vibe of the different gyms you come into. It's for sure right off the bat. So what's next? So we get this thing done, right? We get 2,500 police officers through this program. Then what? What happens then?
Then we take it national. We take it to whoever we need to take to, whether Senate, president, I don't care who it is, but then we make the push, the legitimate push to making it mandatory for all officers across the country. And I think the other thing, jiu-jitsu, yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, it comes down to like, you have to be able to prove at the end of the day that it saves more money than it costs, regardless of outcomes, as bad as that sounds. Which this does do. And so the fact that we can be like, hey guys, for every $1 that you spend, you're saving another 60 cents or whatever on top of it. That's the sell. So we show that it will be this. I mean, I've said this tons of times, but this will literally be the single greatest change in police reform in history if we can get this pushed through and achieve numbers even remotely close to that Marietta study.
Well, and if you think about the money that law enforcement spends on insurances for malpractice-ish kind of stuff, not malpractice, but
we get what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, if you get sued for something that your police officer does, obviously there's insurance for that, right? The state or city is usually paying all of that. One of those lawsuits that happens as on the level it has happened, we've seen nationally. I mean, that's millions and millions of dollars.
That's big money.
So to give you guys an idea, The SPD is actually a fairly big police force. They've got, I believe, between 380 and 450 officers, right? One claim that doesn't even go to trial pays for this entire 6-month program. One claim that doesn't go to trial. That's how cheap jiu-jitsu is in comparison to everything else that goes on for these departments.
That's crazy.
It's nuts.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a no-brainer. But when I'm bringing this up in front of the Common Council here in Syracuse, they're talking about giving it to a kung fu instructor. Like, it's educating the public. It's painful.
That's funny though. That's funny.
It was not funny at the time. Now I can laugh about it, but I was like, "Are you serious right now?" Like, it's
I just want to show them the kung fu. Like, you know how they have the kung fu against the UFC guy. And
yes.
This is what I'm showing them. This is what you're trying to show them. Like, it doesn't work.
No.
I
So
mean,
anyway,
I bet you
education
can
is
find that. Well, they can find that Bushido guy, the Bushido guy, the guy who like does and they just people fly. They could go find him. I bet you get cheap. Like he'd probably do it for like $100,000 for the whole thing.
Exactly. No, it's nuts. It's nuts. So it's educating the public because the public's, it's one of two things. Either they have no idea what jiu-jitsu is, or it's kind of nice that MMA's popularized jiu-jitsu. But then when you're trying to sell it to the police agencies, they're like, well, so are all our guys going to be MMA fighters punching and kicking? And you're like, no. We're trying to steer clear of the punching and kicking aspect. It's the grappling aspect. So education is massive in educating the public on this because they just don't know. Well, like jiu-jitsu is big for us, but it's not big for normal people.
When we see it all the time, when you talk to somebody at work or somebody outside of the community and you're like, oh, I do jiu-jitsu. Like, oh, is it like karate? You're like,
yes, instantly.
Dude, the amount of times I was asked that in middle school and even high school, I was like, guys.
See, if you just would have learned the crane kick, you could have said yes.
Right.
Anybody over the age of
30 years anyways. I don't understand why you're taking so long.
No, and it didn't help because every time like people asked me, because I was a yellow belt for 4 years. Like I got to a certain point, they were like, yeah, no, we're treating Vic like an adult. He's staying at a belt for a while. Yeah. Dude, I was at yellow belt for 4 years, so I was like, yeah, I'm a yellow belt. They're like, cool, you do, yeah, you're a yellow belt in karate. And I'm like, yeah, I am. Right. That's exactly what I do.
That's awesome. So with this whole program, is there going to be like a published curriculum? In other words, like, will you be able to, like, what is that replication process?
Yeah, so this is where it kind of stinks. So the curriculum has to stay under wraps essentially until all data collection is done, right? Because so here's things that we have to avoid. Because I've already run into this. People claiming that they're part of this study that are not. And then I have to avoid people taking the curriculum. And let's say it's some crap school that barely knows what they're teaching. They teach the curriculum and then get really shitty numbers for outcomes. These are things that I have to avoid. So when the national push happens, then it's whatever, because then they get the government agencies will get the curriculum, boom, done, right? But up until that point, it has to be this set of curriculum. It can't be really exposed to the public because I can't have Joe Schmo pretending that they're teaching this and then just fucking ruining everything, honestly, at the end of the day.
Really smart.
Oh, for sure. And you could definitely see how that would happen.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you could pretend to be knowing what you're talking about and trying to teach us this stuff. And to your point, it skews the numbers. Right?
Yes, that's the biggest thing right now is we cannot have anybody who's even moderately inept teaching this and skewing numbers.
So once the year happens, is it going to be delivered by the municipalities or to be delivered by a local school?
So it'll be local because we have to hit the 2,500. So the way that it'll work is after the first year, I will start to approach people that I know. So I basically New York State, I've got a bunch of schools kind of already set up across the state that'll be able to run it. And then anybody else that I can vet myself. I give them the curriculum, I train them on the curriculum, and then they have to pitch the study to their local departments, which will be 10 times easier because they'll say, hey, we are using an already peer-reviewed study to do this. These are our numbers. We need to continue to get more data for the program. So that is the goal after the first year.
I think that vetted piece, right? Like you're able to personally vet them and know who they are, know what they stand for, know how their gyms run, know what that environment looks like. I think that's going to be critical because we had Gabe on and Gabe was talking about some 501c3 that he's part of.
Yes.
And he's like, I don't want just everybody. I want the right buddy. right? Like
Yeah.
the right people need to be involved in this. And to that point, for anybody that's listening out there that does own a gym, and if you're thinking about doing something like this in the next year or so, this may be a good opportunity, but just know that it's going to be vetted. And I think most of my listeners are pretty awesome people, the ones that I know anyway. But you're going to be vetted, right? So we love you. We're still going to make sure that you are in fact doing what we'd expect to see done in this program. So in the next year, so I think that's pretty exciting.
Agreed.
That's awesome. I think what you're doing, Ben, is something that is not only necessary, but
It's needed.
It is. I mean, it's fundamentally needed. Like, how do you go out and train your entire fighting force of the Army, the Marines, the Navy? Like, they're all getting the Gracie Combatives program, right?
Yep.
And then to say that the police force doesn't need that when they're doing
who has more hands-on than any other agency, period. Even the FBI gets 6 months during the academy. Like, why couldn't we have used those numbers and lateraled that over to police departments? This has been eye-opening for me going through the political aspect of things and what a mess it all is.
I think that's the most intriguing part to me is you got
politics.
And you got somebody who's a jiu-jitsu guy. Like, obviously your life is jiu-jitsu prior to respiratory therapy school. But I post that like it's jiu-jitsu and then endeavoring into this super political laden arena.
Yes.
Right.
It's been
I have no tolerance for stupid shit. Like, I just can't do it. Even at work, like the political part, I'm like, I talk to my boss. I'm like, you got to deal with this. Like, I can't deal with this idiot. Like, obviously, I don't understand why we're like, it's obvious to me why you should be doing this, and you don't want to, but I got to be nice to you.
Yes.
So, like, I need you to understand. I'm doing this for your benefit. Fucking go with this, right?
It's like when I tell the kids to do hip pin passes, and they're like, no.
Yeah, you have to. You have to learn how to hip pin pass.
You have to.
You have no choice.
Yeah.
I'm not going to explain to you why. Just fucking do it.
Hip pin pass or start running.
Yeah. Or chopping. Yeah. That's what you should do. At the next council meeting,
everybody's so afraid of liability issues. Like, in New York State's such a mess with liability. Like I was telling you guys, the fact that we had to adjust the curriculum initially because they were worried about a seatbelt grip. Like, what kind of crazy world do we live in? And how do you expect officers to arrest people safely? Like, New York City a while ago made it so you weren't allowed to do any torso restraints. Like, Henner said it perfectly. He did a podcast on it where he was talking about it. And he basically, like, could you hold down a toddler just by grabbing his wrist? Good luck. Like, where are we? Who's making these decisions? It's idiot politicians looking for points with their party.
And I'll tell you, New York, living there for a while, it just echoes through everything. If it's gun reform, if it's like, it doesn't matter. It's New York and California. They're just weird people. Weird people doing those jobs, man. I'll tell you what.
Florida's pretty weird.
Florida's just a fucked up state.
Good weird though.
Florida is weird. There's nothing normal about that state at all. Oh man. So Ben, we're just about an hour. I've got two more questions for you real quick. I hope we got a couple of minutes here. So the first one is, and I got to imagine this list is probably extensive since you've been doing this for so dang long, but what are one or two things that you've learned through jiu-jitsu that you've let impact the rest of your life?
I like how you said one or two because you know he's going to have quite a few.
Oh, he's going to have like 50.
Yeah.
I would, you know what, in all seriousness, probably the first one is patience. Because the longer you do jiu-jitsu, that, cliche saying of you get comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? So especially because of competition, you get used to being stuck in a position and the first person to overcommit or undercommit in that situation is going to lose, right? So you have to be patient in those positions and not rush things. So being patient in life with opening up the business and everything like that, just patience across life. Like jiu-jitsu has really helped with that. I would say out of everything, that is probably one of the biggest that people can take.
Yeah, I got to agree. That's
and I will tell you that statement that he made of in competition, the person who undercommits or overcommits, that's like the most black belt statement I think I've ever heard. If you watch black belt tournaments and you watch black belt fights, that's all it is. It's just waiting for the other guy to fuck up in one way or another, just overcommit or undercommit.
Yes.
It's white belts are different. They're fun.
For sure. Dude, especially like the brand new ones that sign up for competition day of.
Oh yeah.
And just super spazzy.
Because all they do is overcommit and undercommit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dude, I this is off topic, but I remember coaching white belts. It was either Jeremy Martin or Dylan Jacobs. Dude, it was a white belt match, and all I know, the end score, it was like 32 to like 24. Like, that's what I mean. Like, dude, so like they'd hold position for like, and the ref, like, they weren't even holding position. It was like they would get mount for like 2 seconds. All right, 4. It's just like, it was ridiculous.
See, so that's the opposite with my world in the fat old guys. You just stand there and you hold on to each other. Nobody's going down. Nobody's pulling guard. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. My entire first, which apparently has made like reels, because Josh, who is one of our teammates, he's a white belt. He's going for his first tournament. So just like every white belt I've ever known, they look at every YouTube video in the world of like white belt tournaments. And he said he was watching, he was going down the rabbit hole, and he saw me.
No way.
On YouTube. He was watching my tournament. Yeah.
Against which one?
I don't remember.
I
don't remember which one it was. He's like, oh my God, hey, that's Nick. I'm
Nick's
pretty sure it was Vince. Who?
Big boy.
Yeah, he was a big fella too at the time, and we were both just massive human beings, and not in like a strong way, like just big.
It was like pretty much a sumo match, just like bellies touching.
Except we didn't know sumo either.
Yeah,
we didn't know either discipline, and we just like two rhinoceroses just locked up. And we were just holding on to each other's gis. Nobody could do a takedown. I'm sure we were both scared to pull guard. We're like, no, that's not happening. Yeah, we stood up for like 4 minutes and 50 seconds. I think like the last 10.
And then you overcommitted.
I overcommitted, but he didn't get the 2 points.
Yeah, you're
he
right.
Didn't get the takedown because we went to overtime. And then he won. I don't know why.
I think
it was decision.
It was because he pushed more. like that.
It was like tug of war at that
literally,
point.
like, because everything in overtime is based solely on the overtime. And yeah, you're gassed. He was like,
I was wrecked.
I mean, he was too, but he just had a little more.
That was awful. That was horrible. If you ever like go cow tipping, like for real, like honestly cow tip, that's kind of what it was like. They don't fucking move. Unless you get a soft spot in the mud.
How often did you go cow tipping?
I tried it once. It didn't work. Nothing happened. Just he pushed against the cow. It didn't move, and yeah, we bounced. That was it. Yeah. So way the hell off topic, but back in. I'm curious your advice, especially as being a gym owner and a lot of the work you're doing with the police force. If someone came to you and said, hey, look, I'm trying to start jiu-jitsu. I'm thinking about it. I'm nervous. It's an aggressive sport. It's a combat sport. I'm not an aggressive person. I'm not a combat person, but I think it sounds interesting. What would your advice be to them?
So I give everybody actually the same speech, which is a terrible speech to actually get people in the door. But it is one of those things I feel like it kind of weeds out the people who wouldn't have stayed anyways. I always tell them the first 6 months to a year of jiu-jitsu is going to be absolutely awful. And then somebody new will join up and you'll get to try stuff on them. And that's honestly what I go.
I'm not going to lie. That's pretty great advice.
It's right.
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I pretty much tell people the same thing.
It's like when you start a new job and you have to take the garbage out because you're the new guy. You got to take out the garbage and clean everybody's shit up. And then finally the other new guy starts. You're like, yes, I don't have to take out the garbage anymore. Like that is absolutely reality for sure. All day long.
Yeah.
That's great advice. So
I mean, and it depends on why people are coming in, right? Like if somebody's coming in for the self-defense aspect of it, you always try and sell them on the fact that like this is the most proven system that you can use for self-defense, right? And minus if you get very good at firearms, and then that's an entire separate. Well, no, in all seriousness, like it's important to it's really important to nail down somebody's real reasons for coming in. And I always try to explain to people like this is always, even though people claim I teach sport and things like that, what I do is teach people to grapple effectively. So self-defense or being able to defend yourself, even if you don't think that you're getting good at that, that is the number one thing for doing jiu-jitsu. And then camaraderie, getting in shape, all the other ancillary benefits, boom, fantastic. Go with those, right? But at the end of the day, you're learning a skill set to defend yourself. So,
yeah, and I think that's super appropriate. I think there's so many side benefits that you can get really caught up in the why, right?
Yeah,
and there's a reason for people to start. Some of it's Joe Rogan, like we hear that all the time.
Yes.
I listen to Joe Rogan and Joe Rogan. 2000s, it was UFC. I saw people fighting UFC.
Yeah,
that was
me. Dude, watching UFC with my dad. Those are fun times.
We hear it all the time, right? I mean, those are the common answers as to why people start this sport. rarely do we hear people say, "Oh, I wanted to get into self-defense," or "I wanted to get."
It's almost never anymore, right? It's almost always fitness, or I wanted a new workout, or just wanted something fun to try out, right? Like, and that's awesome that is now become the way to get people's foot in the door. But it's always important to remind them, like, you are learning a life skill. So just
and they realize that. Well, it's interesting. So my wife and I were doing something the other day at the gym, and I forget what it even was. Oh, we're doing a takedown where, in essence, you go for a shot and then you come up, and instead of going for the leg, you actually get a bear hug and squeeze in and get a bit backwards.
Yep.
And I was showing my wife that if they get to your back while you're standing, how to grab the Kimura from there. Right?
Yes.
So you just fish and grab the Kimura, and that becomes super effective, especially for women. If somebody comes up from behind you and tries to grab you and pick you up to throw you in a vehicle or something, that's a super effective way to, one, get out of that shitty situation, and then two, when you're out of it, you've got control over the person's entire body. Like, you've got their arm, you've got their shoulder. They're not going, like, that's the kind of thing that we think of from a competition standpoint. Hey, when somebody gets your back, do this. But then you translate that into real life, and that's super.
It's all right. Like close guard, especially specifically for women, like that is going to be the position you were stuck in. Like, I might not like close guard a lot of the times, like after white belt, blue belt, depending on for tournament, but that's why everybody starts with close guard. Like, that's what you have to know. So
that's the bad position you're going to be. And if you can attack from that position, you just became exponentially more dangerous to your attacker, which is obviously going to get you out of that situation a hell of a lot quicker. For sure. So, Ben, this has been a ton of fun. I know we're a little bit over, so thanks for letting us steal the extra time here.
Of course.
So, just real quick, Haven Jiu Jitsu out of Baldwinsville. I don't know, you have a website?
Yes, CMIJujitsu.com will bring you right to our website. And we've got Haven Jiu Jitsu on Instagram and Haven Jiu Jitsu on Facebook. Not TikTok yet. I got to make one of those. But
we can do TikTok. We'll do like a duet TikTok thing. I can't speak to it. We'll get Vic to show us how he's.
You're gonna have to ask Bell and Gabby. I don't know how to use TikTok. I'm just following Haven Jiu Jitsu. Right
so I know Victor's been chasing Pokemon for the last while.
Yeah, dude, I've been on that Pokemon Go hunting. Get me outside moving.
He's getting after it. So yeah, definitely look him up. Super excited to see what comes out of the study. Definitely, I'll be following. I'm sure a lot of my listeners will be following. I know we've had conversations. Really, just I can't applaud you enough for the work you're doing. I know the pain in the ass that it is to deal with the political piece of it, even though the passion's around jiu-jitsu and keeping people safe. The political stuff is just
no thank you.
Well done, man. We applaud you. I'm right?
That's whatever you spent on the soundboard. That was perfect.
I just nailed that.
The soundboard was worth it.
Yeah, that's every penny. So Ben, super happy for you, and I think your actual official launch date is late March. Yes,
March 25th.
Okay, I don't know if you could actually publish a date. So yeah, starting March 25th. So we're looking for a year from now, just after my birthday. We're gonna see you guys doing some really cool stuff. Again, can't wait. Super excited. We'll be following, and I can't wait.
I'm happy to be working with you too on this, Nick. It's fantastic. So I appreciate
it. Those are on their way, man. I'm excited. We're gonna get those things out to you. So thanks for the support. With that, guys, keep training. Stay safe.
Peace out.
See y'all. Hang on 1 second, Ben. I'm gonna hit this button. Hit this button, and that saved, and then hit